Hey everybody. I'm gonna be like a little bit like Mr. Rogers here, except not Mr. Rogers, and yeah, not Mr. Rogers at all. I'm just testing out a new setup here in my little studio to see if I can just have some nice casual conversations with people where I'm not um, always doing the This Week in Science kind of thing. So trying out the Periscope, seeing how it integrates with Twitter. Hanging out in my studio. I have this plan. I have a plan. And in my plan, oh my goodness, my cat is parkour aficionado extraordinaire. Um, anyway, in my plan, what I would like to do is read from my grandfather's stories about San Francisco, which I think would be fun. Number one, because he's no longer around, and these stories are kind of a thing that I like to remind me of him. He lived in San Francisco for a very, very, very long time. Owned a bookstore that was later bought by Powell's Books, and he wrote these stories about his life in San Francisco, and older generations and the ways they see things are often different from the way younger generations see them. Yeah, so I see John there posted a hello. Can you Is this thing on? Can you hear me? Am I just talking into the wind, out into the world? I guess on the East Coast it is, you can hear me! Yay! Um, oh, okay, and so this is where you get to hear me bumbling around because I don't have any tech support here. And I'm just doing this all on my own. Oh my goodness. Oh, James S.A. Corey, I would love to hit another basement dive bar. Maybe in Santa Fe, maybe in Portland someday, maybe in San Francisco. That would be awesome. Um, Anyhow, I'm back. I have a computer glitch and I have to deal with it on occasion. But what that means is the little glitch of my computer means that it's not going to happen again for another hour. So we have an hour. But if you can hear me, I have to go over here and check the comments because I can't see them. I pass on the Turing test. Yay! That's good. I'm so glad. I have to move things around. This is just my test setup to see if I like it, if I need to change it around. Obviously, I need to change some things around. If the audio is good and you can hear me and the video is good, that's the basics. Then I can do everything around and about and around and around. Live, unedited. Anyway, what I wanted to say. It's my grandfather, Frederick Truman Harper. Yeah, that's a mouthful. Quite the name. He moved to San Francisco in the 1920s and owned a bookstore on Powell, and I think it was later bought by Powell's Books. And so he ran into a lot of people. He really knew the city in for years and years and years and years. And so these books are collections of his stories and people that he knew. And from the inside of the cover, now about this book. Millions of tourists come and go through the streets of San Francisco, suffer delicious shivers in the back alleys of Chinatown, or relish the lush taste of a cracked crab cocktail, or marvel at the view from Telegraph Hill. Don't be upset, those of us who live here are still exploring the city, and almost daily finding another quirk, idiosyncrasy, highlight, or just plain view we never knew existed until the magic moment it was revealed. For some 60 years now, I have wandered along the waterfront, ridden ferry boats, shivered in the winds that seemed to come from everywhere at the same time, walked endless miles at Ocean Beach, and lain in bed listening to the lions at Fleischhacker's Zoo roar their displeasure at the wind and fog, a quirk you are not likely to encounter in Duluth. As a resident tourist, I have tried to put it all down so I can remember it and so you can read about it. Aside from cable cars, street corner flower stands, a bay large enough to hold all the navies of the world, 2 spectacular bridges, a real Chinatown, a Japantown, a slice of old Mexico, a little Italy, Russian churches and Chinese temples, hills so steep our cars are barred and pedestrians must take stair steps to get up or down. San Francisco is the kind of place you are not likely to forget, nor will you want to. This book was published in 1999. So we're looking at some 30 years on top of the 60 years that he was a bookseller in San Francisco. And so for the next, I guess, few days, we'll see how long it takes. But I've put it on my calendar that every day at 3:00, I will come here and broadcast and read a bit from the book. And so we can all hear these stories about old San Francisco from my grandfather. I don't know. I have ideas also. I mean, I don't know. It might be kind of fun to take the book and turn it into more of a radio drama, radio play with characters and whatnot. Maybe I can get people to help me read parts. Maybe we can do that with some of the chapters. I don't know. It could be fun. But I'm just thinking out loud. And if any of you, I'm just going to do this because it'll help me record this all by audio. And I can perhaps turn it into a podcast of sorts. But also it'll be fun to read and interact with everybody. And I think it'll be fun to explore these old stories, which are very fun. Old stories are awesome, and San Francisco has so many old stories. It's amazing. Okay, I have to go over here to read the comments because I have the things in the wrong places. Like I said, I still have to move things around a little bit. It's not perfect yet. Oh, I see people. Okay, there we go. I'm just checking things out. Yes, I can keep talking. Because this microphone is better for talking in a room than the other microphone, which is a radio microphone. You have to get right up on the microphone to talk into it. Yeah. So, yes. Self-isolation and quarantine is leading me to actually try to do a project that I've wanted to do for a very long time. Should I read from it today? Should we read a little bit of the introduction? He starts with thank you. Do we want to start with this one? Yes. My grandfather says this is for Jane, Wendy, Carrie, and Ben, and those are all of my... Carrie was my mother, Jane, my grandmother, Wendy, my aunt, and Ben, my uncle. And my grandfather signed it. Isn't that great? For Kirsten Sanford, my only and consequently my favorite granddaughter. That's always a funny joke in the family. I was the only granddaughter for a very long time, so I was always the favorite granddaughter. Didn't give me a big head or anything. No. No. So my grandfather, I can tell you a bit about him. My grandfather had this big personality. He was a radio news reporter for a long time also. He worked at KGO in San Francisco, and he had this big booming voice, and it was his voice. And there was something that we had this family joke for a long time where we would talk about the Harper voice. And my grandfather had it. So if you imagine him reading this story as opposed to me with my female voice, his was a very deep baritone. It had a lot of body to it, and it was very dynamic. He was a very, very interesting person. Very conservative right up until the day he died, and then he apologized to me for it. That was an interesting one. This is, let's see. This is the prologue. The Big Thank You. Perhaps the first person I ought to thank is Bruce Chapman, a very famous producer of radio programs back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, with 5 major shows on the air each week. He was the first person to make me write about what human beings do and say rather than write about what intellectuals say they do. Bruce wanted to know what you had to say about the world around you. He wanted to be interested from the opening line and entertained until the word fini appeared. I have tried to abide by his directions in this book. There are many people to thank for this effort, but the few mentioned here are representative of a great many others. Albert Nalbandian, San Francisco's premier street corner florist; John Maniscalco, a tonsorial artist of unvarying skill and tireless attention to detail; plus his brothers Louis and Dr. Joseph, both of whom provided background for the story about their father, the champion crab fisherman Lorenzo Maniscalco. Thanks to the children of Lily Lum, Arnold Walton, Rebecca, and Rowena, plus Lily's lifelong friend Lillian Jew. To assure I got the Chinatown story right, I spent a great deal of time with Ed Chan. And then, of course, how could anyone write anything about San Francisco without conferring at length with Gladys Hansen? For years, Gladys was head of the San Francisco room at the San Francisco Public Library. Ed Wood, a retired doctor, pathologist, and international authority on sour bread, also is due my gratitude for his help with the sourdough bread story. May sourdough bread machines proliferate. Dr. Wood's book is a dandy. I love that word. It's a dandy. Mrs. Phipps is not one lady, but she represents a group of old ladies without whom San Francisco would not be the same city at all. In her story, I have pieced together features of several old ladies of my acquaintance. And while the incidents may be truthful, they are not necessarily factual. In such an effort as this, cheerleaders are necessary inspirations. For their encouragement, thanks go to Jack Cowden, a friend of some 60 years standing, to Bob Cameron, the originator of those above books, like Above San Francisco, Los Angeles, London, Hawaii, Paris, and Las Vegas, not to forget Kevin Starr, California's premier state librarian, and William Hogan, former book reviewer for the San Francisco Chronicle. One of these stories appeared in slightly different form in California Living, a Sunday supplement of the San Francisco Examiner Chronicle. Another was first written in much shorter form for the Bohemian Club Library Notes. In certain cases, I have changed the names of the participants so they, their heirs, or assigns won't get excited and feel they have been maligned. In no way do I want to hurt anybody's feelings or expose them to ridicule, although also worthy of note is the untiring patience of Doug Watson, without whose encouragement, corrections, suggestions, and knowledge this book would have great deal less impact than is my hope for it. Also, thanks is due Judd Goodrich, piano teacher without peer, French horn player, and a willing contributor to my comfort in a time of need. Dr. Andrew Jameson is one of those scholars whose incredible knowledge of the past, present, and sometimes the future leave me in awe every time I talk with him. How could a guy have learned so much in so few years? A teacher at Harvard and the University of California for years, Andy now spends part-time as archivist and librarian for the Bohemian Club, a job that would leave most members, no matter how famous or wealthy, in a state of eternal perplexity. Andy has helped me in so many projects, I don't know where to begin the thank yous. The drawings scattered about are from Almanac for 39ers, published in 1938 by Bret Harte Associates. So, just to think about this for a second, all these people are probably dead. All the people that he's thanking for help. My grandfather died many years back in the early 2000s, and all these people were of his generation. So that we're 30 years on now from when, 20 years. I can't do math. I can't math, can I? Oh my goodness. We're 20 years on from when this was published, about 30 years on from when he started thinking about writing it and putting it together, and 40 years on from the end of his book-selling career. So, yeah, I don't think he has to worry about maligning anybody or anyone being made fun of, ridiculed. But anyway, I will leave that here for now, and then can come back tomorrow to read more. Oh, the preface, the preface. City of Surprises. That is the first chapter, the preface, and we'll get started with it tomorrow. There are some fun stories in here, though. If I want to tell you about the chapters, we've got cable car capers, gold in them thar hills, crab fisherman, it's a trip, flower vendor, Hangtown Fry, Izzy Gomez, Joe's Wine Cellar, Lily Lum's Chinatown, Mrs. Phipps, Fisherman's Wharf, Frisky Whiskey, Powell Street, Send Them a Message, The Dalton Boys, The Daring Young Men, Tearing Off Some Sourdough, The March of Time, and Swinging on the Golden Gate. There's a lot of stories, and this is one of, I think, 3 books that my grandfather wrote. So we'll start with this one, and if you're interested, or if you know people who are interested in San Francisco history, let them know that I'm going to be doing this reading for as long as it takes, and as long as we are in isolation. And I hope you enjoy the stories, and I will try to adjust my little studio setup so that I can actually read your comments a little more easily. Although it looks like, did somebody put a pile of poop in a comment? Thanks a lot for that. Much appreciated. Okay, I hope you all have a wonderful Monday is where I am. Might be Tuesday where you are. I don't know where you are, but I hope you're having a wonderful whatever, wherever, whenever you are. And I'll see you tomorrow, 3 p.m. Pacific time, for more stories from San Francisco, according to my grandfather. Okay, have a good one.